All right, so what have we accomplished? It's always good to start there. 49 conservation easements on 7 islands. We tend to debate that number a little bit, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
Properties sell and they do get divided and they're still encumbered. That's why it's sometimes confusing. But those are working farms, forests, shorelines, all kinds of properties which will remain in private ownership, and we'll protect them generally by limiting the amount of development that can happen on them. We have 39 preserves, 32 of them are open to the public. And we've got a few more queued up, at least one more queued up. So we'll continue to make these places available to people as long as we can protect the resource, which is our first priority. But we do recognize that we have a constituency, and people without that constituency, we get into all kinds of problems. So we're very interested in providing people with the ability to get into nature and enjoy it. I'll take your question.
What about the 18% that are not open to the public?
Well, some of those will be open eventually. Some of them are not open because they're too fragile, too hard to access is a big issue. We've got some preserves that are far down a private road, and it gets very complicated when you're trying to take the public down a private road where there are 35 people who are on that road. So there are those kinds of elements. So some of them will remain closed because they're fragile and we don't really feel the need. We think we're providing enough places for people to go, and it's important to have places that are just for wildlife or for nature or ecological function. But we are working on opening a couple of the 18%. You'll see that coming down the pike in the next couple of years. Next slide. Oh, sorry, last thing on that. Well, this is keep going. Next one's good. One thing I always want to point out, because it is confused often by the public, and that is how much land we actually own, how much land is in public ownership in the county. And so here are the numbers. We have 17% public land in the county, which is quite low by comparison to most other Western Washington counties. Island County is probably the closest one. They've got a little bit more than we do. The other ones have far more than we do. The land bank owns 5,000 acres. That is 4.5% of the county. So 83% of the county is privately owned. Next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to go through some of the preserve and trail openings we had last year and we've got going this year. So last year we had Katy Mountain open on San Juan. We had North Shore Preserve on Orcas, and we just had not a preserve opening, but a piece of a preserve, Watmow Head on Lopez, and also the trail from Lindy Park on San Juan. That other star you see is the one we're working on to open this year. That's Richardson Marsh. And so there we are. That's where we arrive at 32 open to the public and 82%. Next slide. When we think about our efforts to conserve the islands, it's really important that people know we're not doing this in a haphazard fashion. We have a pretty good method for figuring out what properties are important for a variety of reasons. Now, our mandate is quite broad. I call it the kitchen sink mandate. So it can be everything from environmental to protection of sources of potable water to historical, etc. But I just wanted to cover this a little bit. Next slide. How should we focus our efforts? And these are the things we're doing. You can just keep going down that list. I think there are 5 of them. Okay, so connected natural areas, that's certainly one thing we pay a lot of attention to. If there are properties that are adjacent to preserved areas, we're going to want to try and add to those preserved areas. That's our best bet. In many cases, we're keeping the islands more resilient in the face of climate change, to have larger connected natural areas that are high functioning. Water is certainly something we pay a lot of attention to. We have properties that are significant portions of some of the watersheds out here. But we're constantly looking at wetland protection, riparian protection, shoreline protection, plants and animals. Clearly, we're focused on that. We do a lot of work with some of our more challenged plants and animals. We'll talk a little bit later about our native plant nursery. But we've got a variety of things we're really keeping an eye on and trying to assist in remaining healthy. Working lands is important. We all want to see farms continue as farms, forests stay in forest land. So those areas we're quite focused on as well. And lastly, places for people. Again, this constituency building is an extremely important part of what we do. Okay, next slide. This is just showing the potential priority conservation areas. There are a lot of things on this map. The colored areas, the orange and red, those are the places which really are already developed, or the lots are too small. So we're not really focused on those areas. We're really trying to create these larger connected places still. So that's what you see in the whiter areas with blue outlines. They're next to the green. Those are already conserved places. And so that's how we're going to focusing our efforts. We have a lot of material and studies that we've used to help us focus our efforts. So we've got a habitat conservation plan that we did some time ago. Nature Conservancy did a really resilient lands analysis. We have an ongoing salmon recovery program. The number 1 priority in the county is to conserve undeveloped, intact shoreline properties where we know we've got forage fish or salmon, resource lands, farmlands, forests, public access again. And then also we pay close attention to our biggest partner, the San Juan Preservation Trust, and their priority areas. There's a lot of overlap there, but we like to check in with them often and continue to do projects with them for sure. Next slide. Okay, here it is, placeholder. So I'm not telling you any more about this one. If you want to know, you have to come to the June meeting on Orcas. You can tune in remotely, but we are taking a field trip when we're over there to this property. So next slide. This is a shot of its shoreline. I'll give you a few hints. It is a 24-acre property. It is on East Sound, the water body, that is. Next slide. And it does have rocky shoreline. It also has this pocket beach, which is one of the things that is really important. It's a good public access spot. It's also important for salmon recovery, for forage fish, and other ecological functions. There's also a stream running down beside that beach in one spot. So next one, stay tuned. It should be fun. Take the boat to Orcas. We're going on stewardship, and I'm going to turn it over here to Peter Diazé. He's our Orcas Preserve steward, and he'll take you through things that are happening there.
Thank you, Lincoln. Hello, everybody. I am one of 2 staff on Orcas. The other staff member is Tyler Goodman. We also have a seasonal field assistant this year. And please go ahead to the next slide. So I'll just give you a little overview of some projects that are coming this summer. This is, in addition to our regular stewardship work, we're entering into our first spring with the North Shore Preserve on the north side of Orca, still learning about how people are using and enjoying that, but it seems to be going pretty well. And so I'll just dive into a few projects. One is they're circled there in red. One is at Crescent Beach. Another is at Judd Cove. Another one, East Sound Waterfront Park. And then lastly, Turtleback. And go ahead to the next slide. So the first one is a thinning project of the forest at Crescent Beach. We did a forest assessment. We actually hired a consultant to do a forest assessment in 2022 of multiple preserves on Orcas, and Crescent Beach sort of rose to the top in that assessment as one of our forested areas that really needed work more urgently than others. So in 2024, we updated the stewardship and management plan for that preserve and included our plans to do some fairly extensive forest thinning on the property. That is kind of a broad term for what we're going to do. It's thinning, but it's also more than that. We're seeking to generally improve the health of the forest and make it a little more resilient to wildfire. And it's surrounded, at least on two sides, by developed properties. And it's very windy through there, winds from the north and south, and a lot of very small trees in poor health crowded together. So that really stood out as something we needed to work on. So we applied for some funding from the state, and that bid process for contractors is closing in a few days. And I think we're going to get at least half a dozen bids for that work. When we hire a contractor, they will begin potentially as early as July and go through in that map in the upper left. That's the general work area, the dark kind of strange shapes in the middle. The pink is the boundary of the preserve. And then it's about 32 acres within the preserve that were deemed, most in need of thinning work. So working with a contractor, we'll go through and establish a shaded fuel break through the property that follows the existing trail. That's about 30 feet either side of the trail. And that's a pretty aggressive removal of vegetation to open that up. And, in the event of a catastrophic wildfire, having a break running through that forest would help a lot in being able to access it for fire management. So that's a kind of a mix of a mechanical and manual process to basically cut the vegetation through there. And then the rest of the areas that are kind of surrounding that corridor will be thinned pretty extensively. It's mostly small diameter trees. So we've got about $240,000 from the state to work on this, and we should be able to accomplish it over the next year. We're not yet sure of the schedule. It'll depend on the contractor that we pick. But next slide, please. And then next on to Judd Cove Preserve. This is the preserve with the restored lime kiln. And this preserve used to have a log dump, a pier that jutted out into the cove. That was removed by the land bank shortly after purchasing the property. But we didn't quite take all the material out of there. There's a section of shoreline that's got a rock wall and a lot of concrete debris on the beach. So we applied for and received a grant from the Recreation and Conservation Office several years ago. It's been a long process of permitting, but we just received bids for this project, and we're going to do this in September and just basically soften that shoreline, replant it, and haul out the concrete. That's an image of the plans below, which won't mean much to you, but this is a long and coming project and actually precedes a project that hopefully will happen next year in the adjacent stream. And I'll tell you more about that next year. Next slide, please. And then on to East Sound Waterfront Park. There's been a concrete cistern down on the beach for the last 80 or 100 years. We're not sure. It's been collapsing. It's a bit of a hazardous structure. So we teamed up with the Friends of the San Juans for this project, and they secured funding for it and are managing the contract solicitation. So also in September, they will manage a project that will bring in a barge and basically break up all that concrete and remove a bunch of unnecessary rock on the beach. And similar to the Jed Cove project, just sort of soften and naturalize that shoreline. And both of these projects are going to bring in a certain sediment that is favorable to forage fish spawning. So we expect that both of these beaches will become better forage fish habitat as a result. Next slide, please. And then lastly, the South Turtleback parking lot, we're going to do a major rehabilitation project there. That project, or that parking lot, was built basically in a developed area shortly after Turtleback was opened or acquired, and it holds about 11 or 12 vehicles, but it's kind of an awkward entrance, and we're looking to, within that same footprint, basically expand the parking by probably about 8 or 9 spaces and just make it much easier to get in and out of there. The adjacent overflow parking area, which is just open in the summer, will shift a little bit and actually shrink slightly. And so we're just looking for a much easier to manage, more efficient parking facility there. And that went out to bid a couple weeks ago, and we'll be receiving bids tomorrow for that one. So we hope to finish this project in October. And next year and the year after, this new parking area is going to tie into an adjacent project that we described in the management plan that'll result in that open field on the south side of Turtleback being replanted to oaks, and there'll be an accessible trail kind of winding through that. So that'll be a nice feature, not open for another year or two. And that's really all I have. Happy to answer any questions. I see one from Anne Marie.
Hey, Peter, I just wanted to check in on the Crescent Beach Trail when we're doing that work. Will it still be open, or how are we going to handle that?
We're going to handle that as soon as we understand which contractor we get and whether they want to focus on the winter or summer. There are reasons for and against both, doing the work during the summer versus doing it in the winter. And that'll affect preserve users more in the summer. But very, very likely, we're going to close the preserve, at least part of it. Maybe close the south. They'll work in the north, and close the north. They'll work in the south. We'll communicate a lot with the public as we figure this out, and try to minimize the closures. But yeah, there will be some closures necessary for that.
And just a promo on that June 20 meeting on Orcas. Boy, if you get a chance to get there, you ought to do it. It's really gorgeous.
She's right. Any other questions or comments on Orcas? All right, and I'll turn it over to Amanda on Lopez. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Weedo. I'm the Lopez Preserve steward. This is the kind of overview of things going on Lopez. As Lincoln mentioned earlier, we had the Watmow Head Trail opening on May 3rd. The site's been open to the public for less than a month, and we've had a pretty steady stream of visitors, really positive feedback. Kind of does it for itself because it's so beautiful, but overall I think things are going really well there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. What else is on here? So for Lopez, we've initiated a forestry assessment. I'll come back to that as well. But also excited to say that we've hired a seasonal field assistant, Claire Waterman. Claire started today with an HR, paperwork flurry. And tomorrow will be our first field day. So really excited to have Claire working on Lopez this summer. And then we also have the Richardson Marsh Preserve. That's one that is not open to the public yet on Lopez. And we've been working on some projects there, including the planning for the parking area and there's a well site there, and so I'm really just kind of ironing out the arrangement of their access easement and how that relates to our parking. So some good coordination going on there, and I hope we proceed with getting that parking area, and then people can come and walk the trail that's there to overlook Richardson Marsh. Next slide. A little bit more about what's going on at Watmow Head. The trail is open for people to walk out there, but there's still a lot of ongoing planning and projects. We hired a consultant, a historic preservation group, to assess the 4 buildings on the site. And that's the lower left picture. They're checking out the roofing and structure. And so they're going to prepare a project proposal that describes can we go back? What each building needs and prioritize the most urgent projects. And then the land bank, we can use that information to apply for a historic preservation grant. So they came out in March, and we should have that report in June or July. Over the winter, we removed a paved sport court and we replanted it with natives from the Sailor Seeds nursery. The plantings are looking awesome. A lot of grasses, but wildflowers are blooming, and we'll probably have a little work party. People want to come back out and weed and mulch and just tend to our planting. We've also been working on interpretive and educational signage, so that's coming together. Providing cultural access, we had an opportunity to have participants from the Gathering of the Eagles canoe journey. They were camping at Spencer Spit, which is on the north end of the island, but they were able to come out to Watmow Bay and either hike up, and we had the elders drive in. So it was just a really amazing opportunity to provide and to participate in. And then just some standard maintenance, building some fences and just working on the site there. Can you go to the next slide? So this is a little bit about the forestry assessment. Peter mentioned that when they got started with the Crescent Beach project, that was part of an Orcas forestry assessment that was done in 2022. So now we're picking that up for Lopez. We've hired Rain Shadow Consulting to do that across 7 preserves for, 530 acres. The bulk of that is Lopez Hill, but we also have Upright Head, Hummel Lake, Fisherman Bay Spit, Spencer Spit, Channel, and Watmow. Some of the goals that the assessment will consider is climate change, wildlife habitat, and wildfire risk. And will include an inventory, site conditions, mapping, and monitoring plots, and then have recommendations so we can prioritize future work on Lopez. Let's see, that might be the end of my slides.
Anne-Marie.
Anne-Marie, you're muted.
Hey,
There you go.
Amanda, just a quick
Hi.
question. At Wawa Head, those buildings, do we think we'll be able to use any of them for educational purposes?
So the oldest building is the house, which was built in 1876, or the core of it. And at this point, our goal is to stabilize the exterior with partners, and we envision having interpretive signs on the exterior of the building.
So kind of unknown.
Unknown, yes. Work in progress.
Got it. Thanks.
Mhm.
right, so we're moving to San Juan here, to District One. And we'll start with Katy Mountain Preserve. This is a pretty remarkable project. We've been working up there for quite a long time. Took us 20 years to actually get it open to the public, as we needed to acquire different parcels and finally get to a public road. So public access was opened in 2024. And we'll be working on updating that management plan, or actually, we haven't had one there, because we have always been waiting for the next acquisition to happen, thinking that, well, let's get that one and then we'll get started. Well, it's time now for us to really get that going, get a clear understanding of exactly what our plans are out there. But in the meantime, the trail was opened. It was actually an existing trail. It does go over to the Roche Harbor lands and over to English Camp. So it starts trail enabling you to walk from the middle of the island all the way to Roche Harbor proper, without going on a road. Pretty amazing. So we have been putting in a lot of native plants, mostly around that trailhead area. And we've had a lot of help doing that. SSIS, the Spring Street International School, had a lot of volunteers working on that project as well. And opening the preserve required doing an immense amount of trail improvement. And we had many people, many organizations who helped with that. Okay, so the stewardship and management plan, we're in the research and assessment phase, and we're hoping that we'll have a draft later this year. One of the things about this preserve that's so important is the Gary Oak habitat, the savanna, which is mostly at the top of the preserve and going over onto the south side. So this preserve, when you get there, you're on the north side of it, and you'll see quite a lot of wetlands. Go up the hill, up and over. That part of the trail has not been completed yet, but you come into this Gary Oak area. That's one of the reasons larger protected properties are important in terms of resilience. It gives species the ability to move over time as it gets perhaps too hot. On the south side, what we're expecting is that we'll see kind of migration of plants and animals over the top of that hill and coming down the other side, but some spectacular places out there. We did host a cultural burn event with Coast Salish tribal members last fall. It's quite an undertaking, and this is really something we want to do a lot more of, working with the tribes to look at how they can get on our preserves and utilize them for a variety of purposes. Next slide. Grant Preserve. So we've been doing some restoration out there. We have a 20-acre restoration of a woodland savanna grassland complex. So you can see this area in that photograph is part of that. That's the grassy area, obviously, but quite an interesting spot. And it would appear, when you first looked at it, as just a forest, but realistically, it's a lot more complicated than that. So we've been doing a lot of restoration work out there, and have had a lot of partners, a lot of funding. We've had funding partners, but also a lot of people out there doing the work, from the Conservation District and Islands Conservation Corps, the Samish Indian Nation Department of Natural Resources, Washington Department of Natural Resources. They were primary funders and consulting, and of course the San Juan Preservation Trust, which has a conservation easement and an adjacent property at Mount Grant as well. One of the things we did was have a firewood lottery. When you do this thinning work, you end up with a lot of material, and sometimes it's hard to figure out what to do with it. A lot of it we keep on site. We're stacking it so it will break down over time and provide habitat. But there's still more than that. And so we decided it would make sense to work with a family resource center and set up a lottery for people who might want to come and get firewood for their use in the wintertime. We're gonna be doing some micro burns out here. It's really our first foray into, burns that are not just burn piles, but actually burning areas, so prescribed fire. Now, obviously, this is very, very tiny. We've done very carefully. We're really gonna focus on technique, and figure out how to get this right before we do anything more major. But this will be quite interesting. Again, the Islands Conservation Corps helped get the grant to enable us to do this. And we'll be certainly working with tribal members on this as well. Toilet tech does not look exciting, but I'll tell you, it is definitely a vast improvement over some of the other toilets you might find out on preserved porta potties, vault toilets. You'll get a chance to try one out in the not too distant future. Next slide. Beaverton Marsh Preserve, a huge amount going on out here on this preserve. You can see the photo of it in the lower left. So this is a large preserve, about 475 acres. Last fall, we created the connection to Lindy Park, which you see down there in the lower right part of that slide. So that's managed by Island Rec as an active recreation park with ball fields and other things. We have a trail now that comes off of that, it goes up onto the preserve. And what we do not have is a way to cross over that neck of the marsh, as you see there. So we've got trails on both sides with a gap in the middle, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Some of the things that have happened out there, a lot of volunteers out helping us get rid of noxious weeds and install native plants in some of the more degraded areas. We've had high school student AP kids out there doing assessments, including a bog assessment. We have a sphagnum bog on the site, which is actually not that common. There's a lot we have to learn about. So one of the things going on out here over time, we'll be working to restore this area. Most of it is reed canary grass, which is a very, very tough invasive plant. But this is our largest class 1 wetland in the county, and so we'll be endeavoring to restore it. A lot of restoration has actually happened on its own. If you look at that part of the preserve, kind of northeast of that green trail, you see that lighter green area. That's where a shrubby wetland is really taking over, and that shades out reed canary grass and provides a lot of habitat for birds. So that's been something that's really fascinating to watch. Next slide. There's something quite new. We are trying to capitalize on the appropriation that was made by Congressman Larson to create a trail along the road that went out to Zylstra Lake. Well, that didn't go over very well. A lot of people were quite concerned about impacts on their property, and that project really languished. And so recently, we talked with Washington Department of Transportation, who's administering this, and also with Congressman Larson, County Council, County Manager. And we've all agreed that we should really give this a try to create what is essentially a multimodal transportation trail going from Lindy Park over to our other trailhead, which is to the west of there at Halverson Road. It's going to be a very complex process, very expensive, but there's a lot of money available to work on this, and also money to work on restoration and interpretation, all kinds of things that we hope to do with this, but we're still at the very early stages. We've got a lot of hoops to jump through, and we'll do our best to make this happen. But if it does happen, you'll have a trail that will access down through the marsh, a nice boardwalk, coming up the other side and going out to Halverson Road. Should be able to bicycle it, should be able to get people with limited mobility out on that trail as well. So this could be a very exciting thing. We have a lot of work to do to pull this off. Okay, and we will be, you should look for an opportunity, to participate. We'll be, as we take this stewardship and management plan forward, later, probably this summer. We'll be having a scoping meeting, really just seeking input from people on what they want to see out of it. Okay, next slide. Sailor Seeds Project, something that we kind of danced around here. They're part of a lot of what we do. All of our restoration projects tend to have a planting component. And 10 years ago now, we came to the realization that it was very difficult to find these plants, and decided to embark on creating a small native plant nursery together in partnership with the San Juan Preservation Trust. So this has grown quite a bit over time, literally and figuratively. We produced last year 20 pounds of native seed. Eliza Habiger, who runs our nursery, loves this pound of seed figure. That's a lot of seed. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. So 35,000 plugs going to restoration projects on our properties and partner lands. We're selling plants to the public now during a native fall native wildflower sale. We've created a native wildflower growing guide, and that's available to anyone who wants one. You can also access it. Everyone wants some of those. We had to do reprinting of them. So we actually got some money to make that happen. We've also been working to expand habitat for the island marble butterfly. So that's going on 3 of our preserves.
What does it say concluded?
Sorry?
What is it concluded that the habitat? The movable
Oh, I'm sorry. We had a program which we called Movable Feast, and had some funding to create some of these areas. So those areas have been created, but that project has ended. It doesn't mean those areas now go away. It just means we're not
Thank you.
continuing to do it. Okay, next slide. So 2025 priorities, continuing to do what we do, produce native seed bulbs, plugs. We're also working now quite a bit at our administrative headquarters, office, whatever you want to call it, which is at King Street in Argyle and Friday Harbor. It's an old historic house, and we've got a green space in front of it, and we are progressively converting the lawn of that property into something much more natural. I would encourage people to stop by, because new things are happening all the time. It's really pretty remarkable to see what you can do if you want to give up your lawn and do something that's more beneficial for nature, pollinators, wildlife in general. So this is ongoing. Check it out. Next slide. Agriculture. So we also have a big agriculture effort where we have 700 acres that we protected in agricultural resource land. 500 acres are leased to local farmers. We also have conservation easements, which are farmed. So we're doing a lot of collaboration on this. You know, we're working with the folks who really know more about farming and getting young farmers involved in projects that we do. And I'll come back to a pretty exciting project we've got going now. Yes, question.
Are you talking among other things about the project along Roche Harbor Road?
I'm coming to that next.
Good segue.
All right, next slide. So that's a shot of that very project that Audra was talking about. This is a lease we made to the San Juan Grange, and they are doing basically community gardening, small scale commercial gardening, a whole variety of things out there. They have a lot of people who signed up, including my daughter, I might mention. She's doing great. But they're putting up a greenhouse, and they'll be selling what they grow at the farmer's market. Grange is a permanent stand there, and doing a lot of other things as well. It's just a pretty amazing think we may have jumped the gun, there's another slide in this later on, but some of the other things we're doing, soil health, water quality improvements, habitat improvements. I'm not gonna go through all of those, but we're very experimental. We wanna try things and see what works, and do things a little bit differently, especially when it involves, trying to incorporate how nature functions into, how agricultural systems work. Okay, next slide. Yes, sorry, this is what I was trying to get to. This is the Overmarsh Farm project that's the lease to the Grange. You can see the outline of that lease. It's kind of hard to see, but that's the northern part of Beaverton Marsh Preserve. So everything, there's a yellow line that zigzags across there. Everything up toward the road is under lease to the Grange. There are lots of people out there doing all kinds of things, so I encourage you to talk to the Grange if you're interested in participating. But just a great project. There's a real need for small scale agriculture, and this is going to be an amazing resource for the community, quite frankly. And I will end there. I think that's the last slide, and we'll take questions. I think we can stop screen sharing and see what people have to say. Nothing.
Okay. You mentioned that you did some test burns up at Katy Mountain. How large were those areas and what did the burns entail?
Yeah, very small. They have not happened yet.
Okay.
So we're still in the planning phase. We may get one in June, it's possible. But it's a very small scale, 1,200 square feet, I think, something like that. And it's in an area where there are some really good, there's a really good potential for native plants to come back and colonize that area. So it's more of the grassland area, less of a forest area. But we'll be, again, experimenting, working our way through it, and doing it as safely as we absolutely possibly can.
Yeah. They had similar projects at the national park, where they burned off some small areas to encourage the prairie.
Right, so they've done some, Department of Natural Resources has done some, around Cattle Point. US Fish and Wildlife has done some burning out of Flower Island, one of the islands you pass by on the ferry when you're going by Lopez. So there have been various things, and of course, the Nature Conservancy for years burned on Yellow Island. So this is it's a complex undertaking.
Yeah.
Requires a lot of preparation, and you need to be ready, if you're gonna burn it, for what comes after. Cause it's not like it just springs back into beautiful, pristine nature. You've got a lot of invasive
Wildflowers.
so it has to be carefully planned and managed. Yes,
On the trail from Three Corner Lake to Horse Trail, I don't recall walking through much Gary Oak on that trail.
no,
But there is a branch that goes more towards the top of Katy Mountain. Is that what you're talking about?
right. So with that, the part of the trail that goes up to where the Gary Oak does not exist. There was formerly a trail when it was private property, and that trail had some big issues. There was a problem with grade, there was a lot of erosion happening. So we felt like we needed to close that off. We are intending to recreate a trail to go up there and all the way up and over to the Gary Oak area, but it's not gonna go through that particular spot. We're picking an area with better grades so we can create a trail that's more sustainable and won't have to be managed so much year after year. But, stay tuned.
Okay, this about the League of Women Voters is talking about doing a program on agriculture. And one of the things that we have bumped into is folks who say, why does anybody care about farms on the island? They're just cute little tourist things. So so they're not doing well, it doesn't matter. And so I wanted to ask you we no doubt would come by and talk to you more later, I understand, but a resource for a really good convincing brief way of saying to people, these farms matter. I noticed in one of your slides, you said they mattered.
They
But-
do matter.
They do matter, but, and you've probably experimented over the years with explaining to people why they matter.
Right.
But if you have an off the top of your head thing, great, otherwise we'll just bug you later.
Yeah, well, so, the Agricultural Resources Committee would really be a good place to start. They have worked on these issues for years and years. Their coordinator, Faith Vandeput, is a fantastic resource. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There are
And
a
they
lot
know
of
how to
people-
speak with the general, fairly uninterested public.
Yes.
That's
There are a lot of people out there who are fair, well, maybe not a lot. There are a good number of people who are pretty skilled at doing that and really do a good job of explaining why these small farms are
Yeah.
so important.
Good, because we do have a lot of resources, all from people who are doing farming, and now
Yes.
we want to have, yes, thank you.
Anything else?
Peter, this morning I received an email, a question from someone about what you're doing for the snails at North Shore, the tiny snails.
Thank you. I guess I would say that, the overarching thing is that we have a no collection policy, so people can't gather wildlife or plants on land bank preserves without a special permit in a review process. So that's one thing. I mean, we have a presence on the preserve. We talk to people. We remind them of the rules regularly. I'm not sure which snails in particular this person's talking about, but generally a lot of the marine life is only exposed at the lowest tides there. And we hired Friday Harbor Labs to do a shoreline assessment when we first purchased the property, and the very strong view in that report was that there were very likely to be little or no recreational impacts to that marine life in that area because of the way it's sort of naturally protected and just the species that are out there. So I guess I don't have a great answer for this, but I will be in touch with that person and explain all that, and hopefully through some combination of our policies and people's good behavior, the snails will be fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else online with any questions? I should say a good portion of the people online are commissioners, and I failed to introduce you at the beginning, and I apologize, but maybe you can give a wave. We've got our District 2 Orcas commissioners. There's Anne Marie Shanks and Brian Weiss are online. And then for Lopez/District 3, we've got Tim Clark and Peggy Bill. And for District 1, San Juan, Marilyn O'Connor and Amy Trainer are online as well. So thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
See, I have also one question. Would it be possible to go back to one of the early slides? I think it might have been the second or the third slide that showed San Juan preserves. The preserves are shown there, but there were also some parcels that were in a different shade of green that were unlabeled, and they were unfamiliar to me, and I was wondering if they might be new areas or that you're considering.
Well, I'll tell you what. Thing,
Or we have that after the meeting.
I would be happy to do that with you.
Okay.
One of our problems with this projector is it's hard to see things.
Okay.
The slides are much more vivid.
Right.
Usually, so we
Okay.
can sit down and look
Okay, thank you.
at paper, stuff on paper or a better screen, and I'm happy to go through that with you.
All right, well, I guess that concludes our spring 2025 community conversation. Thank you. I really liked Lincoln's teaser for Orcas. That's a new one. That's the book of bus.
I'm definitely going to that
Thank
one.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.